22 seconds. That's how long Lewis Hamilton held the throttle in Bahrain, Ferrari's new power unit screaming into the desert air while Sam Collins stood barely meters away. No launch, no green light, just revs. And in a season where Formula One's entire engine philosophy has shifted to a 50-50 split between electrical and combustion power, that sound wasn't just noise, it was information. Because other teams had argued that Ferrari didn't need to rev as long before a start. That Ferrari had found something in this new era without the MGU-H. And now, right in front of the cameras, Hamilton does the exact opposite. Coincidence? Or message? If Ferrari truly holds an advantage off the line in 2026, then what happened in those 22 seconds wasn't theater, it was positioning. If you value analysis grounded in what was actually said and done, not just what trended, hit like, subscribe, and click the notification bell, so you don't miss the deeper story behind every race. Sam Collins wasn't speculating from a studio. He was standing in the Bahrain pit lane at Sakhir watching drivers rehearse practice starts during preseason testing. The focus wasn't lap time, it wasn't sector splits, it was procedure. Under the 2026 regulations, the MGU-H is gone. That small but crucial component once helped eliminate turbo lag across the lower rev range by maintaining turbine speed. Without it, drivers now need more time to prepare the power unit for launch. That's not opinion. It's mechanical consequence. Collins stated clearly that some teams had attempted to change the start sequence for 2026. That proposal, he suggested, had been blocked. And he pointed directly toward Ferrari while saying it. The implication was subtle but sharp. Ferrari might not need as much preparation time. Then Hamilton pulled up next to Collins. Not further back like others, not out of camera range, right there. And he revved the SF26 for 22 seconds. Collins' reaction was immediate, a facial expression, a shake of the head, a recalibration of the narrative he had just laid out. The clip drew 3.8 million views on X by Monday morning. That number matters, because this wasn't just a technical moment, it became a perception moment. Some online dismissed the idea that Hamilton had done it deliberately. Collins replied, "Actually, I believe that he might have done." His reasoning? Hamilton had seen them filming other launches and positioned himself closer than anyone else. There was no accusation of deception, just observation. And here's the pattern break. Ferrari were rumored to need less rev time. Hamilton then demonstrably used more. The contradiction is what ignited the row. But the real story isn't whether Hamilton meant to send a message. It's why Ferrari were being discussed as different in the first place. And that leads us directly into the technical fault line forming beneath the 2026 grid. The removal of the MGU-H changes everything about how these cars leave the line. In the hybrid era that began in 2014, the MGU-H served as a bridge between combustion and electrical systems. It harvested energy from the turbo, but, more importantly for starts, it could maintain turbo speed when the driver lifted off the throttle. That meant less lag, smoother torque delivery, and faster response. Now it's gone. Under the 2026 formula, engines shift to a 50-50 split between electrical and combustion power. The turbocharger must spool naturally without that electrical assistance, and that takes time, which is why multiple teams reportedly want changes to the start procedure. George Russell offered a revealing insight in Bahrain. He suggested Ferrari might be able to run higher gears than other manufacturers, potentially implying a smaller turbo. A smaller turbo would spool faster, reducing lag and potentially shortening preparation time before launch. That is not confirmation, it is inference, but it's a logical one. If Ferrari's turbo architecture differs, then their launch preparation requirements might differ too. That matters because race starts are procedural. Drivers must wait for the final car to form up. The light sequence has timing variables. If one team can stabilize power delivery faster than others, the competitive balance shifts before the first corner. Oscar Piastri warned that this year a poor start might not cost 5 meters. It could cost 6 or 7 positions. That's not a small margin. That's grid inversion territory. Pierre Gasly went further. He told fans to watch the Australian Grand Prix start closely because it could be one that everybody remembers. This isn't about marginal gains, it's about volatility. And volatility at the start of a race, where 22 cars launch with a couple hundred points less downforce, as Piastri described, introduces risk. Ferrari opposing a change to the start sequence last year now gains context. If they're comfortable with the current procedure and others are not, that's not coincidence, that's alignment. Which makes Hamilton's 22-second rev not just a spectacle, but a variable in a much larger equation. At the center of this debate sits a philosophical divide. Some teams appear to believe the new start configuration creates too much randomness. They've reportedly pushed for either a minimum delay in the light sequence or a defined minimum time before lights out once the final car forms up. Ferrari is understood to have opposed that. Why would they? Because regulation neutrality is rarely neutral. If a team feels structurally comfortable with a system, stability becomes advantage. Russell's comment about Ferrari running higher gears hints at a design philosophy choice. A potentially smaller turbo may sacrifice peak airflow potential but gain responsiveness. That's a trade-off. In a 50-50 power era, responsiveness at low revs becomes more critical than ever, especially when the MGU-H safety net is gone. But the philosophical split isn't just engineering, it's political. When Collins pointed and said the proposed change had been blocked by this team, that public framing elevated Ferrari into central narrative territory. And Ferrari are no strangers to regulatory flashpoints. The tension isn't accusation, it's interpretation. If Ferrari genuinely found a way to reduce turbo lag within regulations, then opposing procedural change is logical. If other teams are struggling with energy deployment mapping at launch, they want time buffers. Two different problem sets, two different solutions. And when Hamilton revved for 22 seconds in clear view of the cameras, it blurred the clarity of Ferrari's supposed advantage. Was that demonstration proof they require equal preparation? Or was it a reminder that perception can be manipulated by presentation? Because sometimes, in Formula One, the most strategic move isn't technical, it's narrative. And narrative control has always been part of championship warfare. Strip away the engines and regulations, and what remains is tone. Collins did not accuse Hamilton of deception. He said, "I believe that he might have done." That phrasing matters. It suggests awareness and not wrongdoing. Hamilton stopped closer to the filming position than other drivers. That's factual observation. Others launched further back. That's spatial context. Online reaction labeled it an on-purpose moment. Some dismissed the idea outright. Alex Brundle defended Collins, calling him one of the nicest blokes ever, and stating they were obviously just doing something else. That defense reframes the incident. Instead of subterfuge, it becomes procedural variance. Hamilton's action becomes ambiguous, and ambiguity fuels debate. Drivers are acutely aware of cameras during testing. They know where microphones are. They understand how small moments can shape narratives before a wheel has turned in competition. But here's what's critical. There was no denial from Ferrari, no correction, no clarification. Silence can be neutral. It can also be strategic. If Hamilton's extended rev was purely mechanical necessity, then it reinforces parity. If it was deliberate positioning, it reinforces intelligence. Either way, Ferrari remains central to the story. And that is influence. Because the real shift in 2026 might not be horsepower. It might be how quickly teams adapt to uncertainty. And that uncertainty is about to be tested under race conditions. The start sequence is not arbitrary. It is governed by procedural timing linked to car formation and light activation. Any change requires F1 Commission approval. Ferrari reportedly opposed a proposal last year to modify the sequence, either by introducing a minimum time or delaying the minimum time after the final car forms up. Now, after FIA simulations and system evaluations during the Bahrain test, the issue is returning to discussion. That tells us something. This isn't social media drama, it's institutional consideration. Multiple drivers have expressed concern. Piastri highlighted the potential for anti-stall engagement. A system triggered when revs drop too low. In a tightly packed field, that risk increases dramatically. 22 cars, reduced downforce, less stable rear grip at launch. That combination creates compression risk into turn 1. Gasly's warning about Australia potentially being historic suggests unpredictability is expected. and unpredictability at race starts can redefine championships early. If Ferrari feel confident under the current procedure and others do not, that's not controversy. Now, it's competitive divergence. But once the FIA steps in to evaluate, neutrality becomes scrutiny, and scrutiny invites politics, which means this debate isn't ending in Bahrain, it's just beginning. Race starts carry disproportionate championship weight. A gain of 3 positions off the line at a front-running team can translate into immediate undercut protection. A loss of 6 positions can force alternative strategy that compounds tire degradation. If volatility increases at launch, the title fight becomes less about qualifying perfection and more about procedural execution. That shifts emphasis. Teams who mastered energy recovery mapping under the MGU-H era must now redesign approach entirely, and early season results matter psychologically. If Ferrari emerge from Australia with a clean, controlled launch while rivals falter, perception solidifies into belief. Belief influences regulation debates. Belief influences political leverage. And if another team suffers catastrophic anti-stall engagement into Turn 1, the push for procedural change intensifies. One race can create precedent, and precedent, once established, rarely disappears quietly in Formula 1. The 22 seconds were not about decibels. They were about narrative control. Ferrari are positioned at the center of a technical and political discussion before the season even begins. The removal of the MGU-H forces teams to confront raw turbodynamics again. The 50-50 power split increases energy mapping complexity. Reduced downforce increases instability risk. That triad creates tension. Hamilton's rev did not confirm advantage. It did not deny it. It complicated it. And complication favors teams comfortable with ambiguity. If Ferrari truly believe in their architecture, they will resist procedural changes. If others fear volatility, they will lobby for safety buffers. The F1 Commission discussion becomes the next battleground, because in Formula 1, engineering decisions cascade into regulatory consequences, and what began as 22 seconds of throttle in Bahrain may ultimately reshape how races begin in 2026. The evidence we have is limited, but clear. The 2026 regulations remove the MGU-H. That increases turbo lag. Teams are adjusting. George Russell suggested Ferrari may be in a more comfortable launch position. Sam Collins observed Hamilton revving for 22 seconds despite suggestions Ferrari require less preparation. Multiple drivers warned of increased launch volatility. Ferrari previously opposed start sequence modification. The FIA has now evaluated procedures during testing and will revisit the topic. No accusation has been made. No rule has been broken, but perception has shifted. Hamilton's rev did not answer the question of Ferrari's advantage. It ensured the question remains open. And in Formula 1, controlling the question can be as powerful as controlling the answer. Because if Australia produces chaotic starts, pressure mounts. If Ferrari launch cleanly while others stumble, pressure mounts differently. Either way, 22 seconds in Bahrain have become symbolic of a larger structural transition. And the unresolved question now is this: if Ferrari genuinely found a way to mitigate turbo lag within the regulations, should the start procedure be adjusted to preserve competitive parity, or is adaptation itself the ultimate measure of engineering excellence in Formula 1?